Growing up, my parents talked about meeting in high school. My Christian community talked about saving yourself for marriage. There was this constant emphasis on finding your person, your soulmate. And for whatever reason, that idea really resonated and stuck with me. I fantasized about finding my future partner, somebody to love, play with, build a life with. And because of my personality, when I latch onto something, I really fucking latch on. For better or for worse, I became hyper fixated on the idea of finding a unicorn partner as far back as I can remember. Here's the thing though, that intensity did not land the same with everyone, obviously. In some connections, it was simply too much, especially earlier in my life before I had awareness or filters around the energy. In other connections, it felt magnetic at first. The focus, the depth, the emotional presence, it created a strong sense of closeness early on. And for a while, that felt like chemistry, like promise, like this might actually finally be it. But over time, I started to notice a pattern. The same intensity that created connection up front often made it hard for the relationship to stay regulated long term. What felt exciting and meaningful at first became harder to sustain in real life. So I found myself in relationships that started with a lot of hope, but struggled once things needed to slow down, stabilize, and settle. And because of that, many of those relationships could not last. Not because anyone was wrong, but because the dynamic itself was not sustainable. But I'm persistent. Over time, those failed relationships evolved into a deep passion for psychology, relationships, and human nature in general. Specifically, what actually makes two people compatible enough to want to stay together long term. I genuinely believe that our struggles become our callings, and the things that hurt us and challenge us often become the problems that we're driven to want to most understand and eventually help others with. That's my story. That is why I care so much about this topic of compatibility and resonance. But something about this has been hitting me really hard the last few years. The idea that biology and the way evolution actually works makes finding a truly compatible match incredibly difficult, maybe even rare. And when that realization landed, I grieved it. My inner child felt sad, and there was a heaviness, almost like a cloud overhead. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Biology is not a compatibility machine. It's a reproduction and expansion machine. Nature is not concerned with emotional fulfillment, lifelong marriages, or deeply compatible partnerships. Those are human inventions, cultural frameworks that we've developed as our consciousness has matured. Marriage, long-term partnership, emotional intimacy, these are societal structures designed to bring stability, safety, and predictability to human life. They are not biological imperatives. And when we confuse the two, when we expect the universe to provide soulmate-level compatibility as a default, we end up frustrated, bitter, and disconnected from reality. False beliefs create resistance, and resistance creates suffering. The shift that brings peace is acceptance. I believe true happiness comes from congruence with what is. As Byron Katie says, I am a lover of what is. When we stop struggling against reality, against the universe, something interesting happens. Life starts to flow. We become more grounded. And paradoxically, we often start attracting people who are more aligned with us. Not because we're forcing it, but because we're no longer projecting fantasies, stories, and expectations onto others and the world. We're meeting reality directly as it is. That's where real intimacy lives. Not in fantasy, but in truth. Because fantasy eventually always shatters. And when it does, we often punish our partners for not being who we imagine them to be. So what's the actual truth? The truth is this. Human personalities did not evolve for easy compatibility. They evolved for survival and reproduction. Nature perpetuates polar traits, different strengths, different temperaments, different nervous systems, because diversity keeps societies functional and expanding. At no point was evolution asking, how do we create the most emotionally compatible couples? It was asking, how do we survive? How do we reproduce? How do we fill roles that keep the species going and expanding? Lifelong partnerships are optional from an evolutionary standpoint, which means compatibility was never meant to be easy, automatic, or guaranteed. So what do we do with this? Well, here's where I've landed. Number one, we have to realize that compatibility is just rare, and it's not a personal failure. There is no single soulmate for you out there, but there are people who will be more reciprocal, more supportive, and more aligned with your nervous system. Understanding that gives you a massive head start. Second, we have to stop fighting reality and start learning how it actually works. And when you start understanding personality dynamics, attachment styles, and nervous system compatibility, you stop forcing relationships that were never meant to work and out of alignment. And you stop blaming yourself when they don't work out. That's what this channel is all about, helping you get into flow with who you are instead of fighting the universe with unrealistic expectations. So if that resonates, I'd love for you to subscribe, keep exploring this with me, because compatibility isn't impossible. It's just rarer, more nuanced, and more earned than we were ever taught to believe. Thanks for watching.